All right. I don't think anybody's here yet. We'll just wait. Mm-hmm. Bless you. The roast is already in the oven. That's just the oven coming up to temperature. Give it about half hour maybe. And it should be nice and fall apart awesome. 45 minutes would be better. It's actually already cooked all the way through. It's actually already cooked. If you guys don't start showing up by about, hey, somebody finally showed up. Hi, how you doing? We still have a few more minutes till everything. We still have a few more minutes till we officially get started. You know that. I'm going to say if we start having connection issues, or if it doesn't look like there's anybody in the stream by about 10 after, then what I'll probably do is just turn this off and record a completely different video that goes over the same materials, but it just won't be live streamed and you guys won't be able to ask questions live the way we are. Which, you know, might not be a terrible idea. Just saying. A few more minutes. There isn't, you guys aren't having connection issues, are you? Getting kicked or anything like that? Does the stream look solid? Is there a bad lag? No, don't everybody talk at once. Okay. All right. All right, good deal. Hey. 1 second. It's going to blip out for just a moment. Let's see. Okay. All right, we're back to being live. Cool. Apparently some people forgot the, or didn't get the message about the live stream going up. So we'll give them a couple more minutes because there is some stuff. We want to tie everything together and make sure that everybody gets all of the pieces in order. As I deliberately chose to teach each of these topics in this order so that it becomes a really cohesive thing, okay? All right, here we go. All right, so according to my calculations, we'll only have 3 more live streams after this, 3 more classes after this. The next one should be on forgiveness. The one after that will be on relationships. And the one after that, the final one, will be on dreams. If there is other stuff that we need to go over or discuss, please let me know. And I'll see if it warrants a full session. If not, we can roll it into one of the other ones. Okay? All right. So today's session is on tapping, also known as an emotional freedom technique, tapping and releasing. So the, as I said, I have taught these topics in this order for a reason, and we're going to start on there from that perspective. So remember, the very first thing that we talked about was the history of Reiki, but more importantly, we talked about the 5 principles of Reiki. And the 5 principles are: just for today, I will anger not. Just for today, I will worry not. Just for today, I will be grateful. Just for today, I will do my work honestly. Just for today, I will treat myself and all living things with compassion and respect. And the reason that I wanted this to come through first is that when we start a healing process, when we start a healing journey, which way do we go? So I'm going to take a little aside here, and those who have hung out with me around probably any sort of alcohol know this story, but I really like analyzing folklore and mythology to kind of pull out the the underlying meanings behind it. And one of my favorite stories is about Noah and the flood, from the Torah and the Christian Old Testament. So if you read it literally, then basically what it says is that God's an asshole. Who, people weren't playing his game, so he just decided to wipe everybody out. And, that's kind of done it for a lot of people. It's easy to get that interpretation. However, you can look at it a completely different way, and this is the way I like to look at it. There's a passage where Noah gets drunk, and his youngest son finds him, and I don't mean like Noah was drunk. I mean like he was stark, raving, naked drunk, So youngest son finds him, sees him naked, dad's ashamed, curses the son to be the slave of his brothers and all this other horse shit, and it doesn't make any goddamn context, pun intended, unless you realize that that passage happened before the flood. Because the story of the flood is actually the story of addiction. And it's a story of recovery from addiction. And look at the symbolisms, look at the allegory of it. And Noah has a serious problem. Now, he's a pious man. He loves God, and he is driven to this addiction because he can't cope with other people not loving God the way he does. Okay? It's a personal issue, but, and he doesn't deal with it well. So God says, all right, tell you what, man, I love you so much. Do me a favor and build me a big-ass boat. And that is a symbol of faith and covenants and commitment. And God says, okay, on this boat, you're going to put the things that are important to you and the things that are important to me and nothing else. So animals, things like that. Family, all right, big deal. But then along comes the storm. Now, water is a symbol of emotion. Big fuck off storm, 40 days, 40 nights. Big flood everywhere. Well, by no small coincidence, it takes about 40 days, about 6 weeks or so, for your body to physically recover from alcoholism. That's why programs that last less than 6 weeks never work. The recidivism rate, because I can't say that word, recidivism, whatever it is, relapse, very, very high. So it has to be at least 6 weeks. 2 months is better. And after that, though, the floodwaters don't recede immediately. Noah is, you go, and I don't know if any of you have gone through DTs or have gone through detoxing from alcohol in particular, but it's very intense. Luckily, I've never been that bad, and I've never had to go through it myself, but I have known way, way too many people who have, and I've nursed them through it because I'm a sucker. Or just a really nice person. No, I'm a sucker. So 40 days, 40 nights, then the rains subside, but there's still the flood, and Noah is kept above these very, very intense emotions, this very, very intense emotional pain, the water, by this covenant, by this commitment, by holding dear, holding precious, and protecting the things that are important to him, things that are important to God. And then towards the end of it, he sends out a raven, which is, in this case, a symbol of, by some versions it's a crow, but I think it's almost always a raven, or is usually a raven. Like this sort of aggressive indignation, like you can't control me, kind of thing. And of course he comes back empty beaked. They don't have hands, right? Sends out a dove, symbol of inner peace. Also comes back empty beaked. But in this moment, Noah has a choice. He can pick yet another bird, or he can double down and make a commitment to inner peace. And he does that, and the dove goes out and brings back the olive branch, and they land on Mount Ararat, and the floodwaters recede, and all of a sudden, all the people that pissed him off before are no longer available, or are no longer around. Okay? So, in order for Noah, allegorically, to hit land, he had to make a decision about which direction his healing was going to go. And he had to make a serious commitment to that. And by laying out the 5 principles first, when we start thinking about and we start looking at where we want to go and how we want to heal, that's our guiding light. I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't want to worry. I want to appreciate the things that I have. I want to know that I'm doing a damn fine job no matter what it is, and I want to know that I and everybody around me is regarded with compassion and respect. I mean, that's a beautiful way to live, right? Well, when you are suffering at the hands of fate and slings and arrows and blah, 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 and life just fucking happens, and shit gets nasty, and we end up with wounds, and we end up with scars, and we bleed out everywhere, and all that other stuff, it can be hard to remember. It can be hard to remember exactly. Did you want to take over this part? it can be hard to figure out exactly which direction you want to go in. Okay? You're not helping. Pick a spot. Not that spot. Okay, maybe for a minute. So, this is, you want to say hello? This is Her Royal Majesty, Queen Mab, the Raven Floofiness. She likes things on her own terms. And she came for a butt scratch and she got picked up. She's not crazy about that. Anyway, so 5 principles. It was a very, very important part to start. Okay? You've got that. You've studied it. You've analyzed it. You've gone over it. You know it. Then we talked about Reiki. And everybody, or almost everybody, received a Reiki attunement. And the reason that it was so important for you to have that before we got to this part is that when we talk about releasing, when we talk about tapping, we talk about, truly getting in deep and doing the very, very hardcore healing work, even on surface levels. Calling Reiki lets us pull that emotion up much more easily because it can create this sort of safe space. Now, I did go into a whole lot about what you can do with Reiki and how Reiki works and things like that. But one of the techniques that I use a lot is sort of calling Reiki and then visualizing it sort of wrapping itself around me in a bubble. And that creates a very specific, very well delineated safe space. And when you have that, then it's much, much easier to pull the shit up and deal with it in a much more final fashion. Okay, so now we know which direction we want our healing to go, and we know what our goals are, ultimately, in very general terms. We know that we can create safe space in order to deal with those things. Then we talked about how to use your words, how to pick the right words. It's one thing to say, and it's something that we're going to get into a little bit deeper in just a second. We, everybody I know has anger issues, okay? But anger isn't the core. As we talked about before when we were talking about the 5 principles, anger is a fear emotion. And we can tap on the anger, but we have to be prepared immediately thereafter to address whatever the fear was, no matter where it comes from. Because if you don't, then that can spin up into something else entirely. And we've seen really, really bad shit happen when that was not addressed and grabbed by the horns as soon as the opportunity presented itself, okay? So we want to be conscious and aware of our words. We want to know what those words mean to us, but we also want to recognize that our mind is really fairly literal. And if we say, a hill of beans, we're thinking of a hill of beans. And it's not going to do us a whole lot of good. So we want to use words like intensely or very or immensely or aggressively to really effectively, directly describe whatever emotion, whatever feeling we're talking about. Okay? So we know that we have a direction. We have an ultimate goal, very grand general goal. We have a safe space. We have a language with which to identify it, but now how do we know what we're going to do? That's where the last session from a couple of weeks ago, thank you guys so much for giving me the week off. It was a big deal. I really, really appreciate it. It's where the muscle testing comes in, right? It's a big deal. So even if you're doing it by yourself, even if you're going to go through tapping and you're going to go through this process by yourself, you always want to start off by writing a list of those statements, of true false statements. I'm angry about this. I'm frustrated with this. I'm happy about this. And try to identify what all of the parts are, especially if you have such a complex or amorphous issue like, here's a great example, road rage. Oh, honey bunch. I invent cuss words. I have so much road rage. It's hilarious in a very dangerous, laugh it off, I'm so glad we got there safely kind of way. And I realized I really needed to rein it in because it's dangerous. You know, okay, yeah, I'm cussing at people, but what if it gets over the top? What if I can't control that? All right. So I'm sitting here one day and visualizing being in the car and you know, and I'm watching these guys drive around me, and I'm trying to figure out what it is about these other drivers that triggers me to be so fucking angry all the time. And it was related to my autism and how the rules are the rules and you're supposed to follow the rules. And the person cutting me off isn't making me mad because he's endangering my life. He's making me mad because those aren't the goddamn rules. And it's creating anxiety, and my anxiety immediately translates into anger. And my anger, thank the gods, translates into whole brand new cuss words that nobody's ever put together before. I'm mostly certain, at least in my car. And so when I knew that, when I started to understand that, I was able to design a phrase and tap on that, and bit by bit, because of course I'm doing it by myself, I don't have a spotter most of the time, especially not when I'm in the car. Bit by bit, it's been releasing, it's been reducing, and it's been getting better and better and better. Okay? So, so definitely designing your statements and trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're trying to address. That's a very, very big deal. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about the two basic levels, the two initial levels we're going to go into of EFT and tapping. To give you just a very, very brief background on where EFT comes from. Emotional freedom technique. It is sort of the successor of, what was it called? Thought field therapy. I think it was developed by Dr. Callahan. I want to say Robert. I could be completely wrong. I wrote it. It's on the other hard drive that I'm not currently having access to, so just bear with me for a minute, guys, on that one. The article will be up on the Patreon probably later on next week. I think I put them up on Mondays. Gary Craig was an engineering dude and a motivational speaker who studied under Dr. Callahan. And Dr. Callahan's method drew on Dr. Goodhart's information and theory. Dr. Goodhart is the guy that developed applied kinesiology, which is very similar to muscle testing, except it's specifically applied to physical diagnoses and adjusting the body. I mean, it's used by a lot of chiropractors, to put it into context. So Callahan was using that and these acupuncture points, not acupressure, but acupuncture points, and realizing that if he just stimulated them, you know, in a certain order or a certain way, certain types of emotional issues were released. It was really amazing. But it was also very cumbersome, and it was very difficult to get trained on, and it was very difficult to master. And Gary Craig and Pat Carrington and I think that's her name, Dr. Pat Carrington. Yeah, I think that's right. You know, they said, well, we can do better. This is a good first step, but we can do better. And Carrington developed AccuTap, which was also a scaled down version. Gary Craig developed emotional freedom technique, and in the end, EFT just turned out to be the more efficient and effective program. And Dr. Carrington actually adopted it as well. So, you know, everybody's in agreement here. What I love about EFT is, first of all, that it's immediate. And this all happened like, I want to say the 90s, 80s or 90s. So I know Callahan got started in like the 60s and 70s, and then I think it was 1995, Gary Craig really brought out EFT, emotional freedom technique, to the masses. And there are thousands of hours of video where you can watch sessions happening. And there's a phenomenal community out there, and he does offer it for free, which is pretty cool. You know, just the basic training, but you know, you have to obviously give him props, which of course we will, and there will be a link in the description so you can go check out his stuff directly. We do not use the Ultimate Therapist technique because I think it requires a lot of faith for people who don't have that yet. So we're just going to stick with the tapping part. We know it works. We don't just know it works. You know, I think I was talking about this before when we were looking at NLP and muscle testing and stuff like that. You go and you want to find all the best sources so that you know that what you're doing is the right way. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? I can't remember if I adjusted the volume or not. But there's just, you know, go to scholar.google.com, and of course I'll have plenty of links and resources for you. All right, excellent. Very, very cool. Yay! Pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of double-blind studies, of randomized trials, of all kinds of controlled, uncontrolled, and testing on EFT in a wide variety of clinical environments, and every single one of them says, yep, this shit fucking works, man. Damn! It's pretty cool. There are some variations that I've seen in some of the studies that were a little bit undecided. It's like, yeah, there's statistical significance to our findings, but we're not really sure where it's coming from. And what I noticed is they weren't using the original formula. They weren't using the original technique. So that's that always gives me concern. I always want to see what the nature of the study is. I don't just read the abstracts if I can help it, because there's a lot of stuff that's on it. By the way, if you guys are interested in this, just to let you know, turns out that whenever you pay for access to scientific journals and stuff like that, the money goes directly to the publication and not to the author. But the author has the right to distribute it to their heart's content. So if you really, really need the full text of a study, email the authors, and they will usually be more than happy to send you the entire text so that you can analyze their work directly. Just thought you should know. So Gary Craig, he developed this program, and most of his truly remarkable work is actually done in VA hospitals specifically to treat PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is not something that just happens to veterans. That is not something that just happens to people who are in war zones. And it happens to people in a wide variety of circumstances, because it is not something that can be assessed objectively. Like, the potential for PTSD is not an objective thing. All right, you can't say, well, this situation is going to give people PTSD. The individual is the one that develops PTSD, and it is entirely a matter of their neurological makeup that determines whether or not that's going to happen. All right, so here's the current working theory, and of course I'll have all the links to this in the article that gets published. So the current model, and we're going to talk about PTSD the most because it's the most profound. So you have an experience, any experience, and your hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped glands on either side of the corpus callosum, excuse me, the part that connects the two hemispheres of your brain, sort of determines, its job in part is to determine how, and this is super simplified, so don't get on my ass about this, but it is super simplified. They determine in part how your memories are prioritized. You know, what's the most important memory? What are your formative memories? What are your long-term memories? What needs to be saved? What is going to help us make the best decisions and the best choices for long-term survivability? Okay? And part of how it makes that decision is based on the amygdala and the other fun glands that escape my memory immediately. Talking about brains, can't talk about itself. It's weird. Okay. But based on the types of chemicals that the amygdala releases, is it fight? Is it flight? Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it excited? Is it terrified? Is it elated? Is it aroused? What is it? That signals the hippocampus to say, okay, here's how to prioritize this. When something traumatic happens, and everybody responds neurologically in their own way to any given stimuli, the amygdala goes, holy crap, ah! And floods the brain with this hardcore, oh shit, we're in danger hormone. And the hippocampus goes, well, for fuck's sake. And this is the most important thing in the world. And it registers and records this intense, traumatic, horrible experience as a 0th priority memory, which means it always stays right there in your RAM, you know, in your immediately accessible memory. And it is possible to have more than one 0th priority memory. Of course it is. The other cool thing is that if you have an early 0th priority memory, that sort of blazes the trail for there to be more and more 0th priority memories. And so you can end up with an entire string of extremely traumatic events that keep triggering and triggering and triggering. And what happens when a PTSD event triggers what is traditionally called a flashback, it's not always, hey, I'm experiencing bombs and bullets and stuff like that. It can be in cases of rape, okay? Extremely common for women to go through this and to carry that PTSD. And all that it takes is somebody to walk past her wearing the same cologne that her attacker used. And she's right back there. And physiologically, she's back in that state of anxiety. She's back in that state of fear. She's back in that state of aggression. She's back in that state of fight or flight. And there is no physical threat around her, but because her 0th memory, her 0th priority memory says, this is how we recognize a threat, she's right in that moment ready to be defensive, ready to kick somebody's ass or curl up in a ball or whatever her response is recorded to need to be. Okay? So that's how PTSD works. The good news is that when we go back and we release one, and ideally the right one, the earliest one, and sometimes we have to do a couple to kind of work ourselves back, then we don't have, if there's 17 different episodes, we should only have to release 3 or 4. Max. More than that, y'all need to like take a step back, take a few days off, and then let's like reassess and see what's really going on here. That is physiologically what we're up against, neurologically what we're up against, okay? So EFT, and I'm actually going to show you a couple of different release techniques. EFT is one of them. We're going to talk about the Castaneda maneuver as well. It's my quickie, my fast one. So you can use EFT to release trauma. Okay, the big stuff. I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't fucking do it without a spotter. Now, what's a spotter? A spotter is someone who is trained in EFT, who is trained in the at least basics of psychology to understand how these emotions roll, where they come from, things along those lines, so that they can help you stay accountable for, help your emotions stay accountable and in the moment as you're trying to pull them out and deal with them. I didn't have a spotter for a long time. I didn't really know anybody else who did EFT that I could, really call on when I was in crisis. And what ended up happening is I tried to work on a lot of deep stuff myself because it was causing me extreme anxiety at the time. And I was able to release it for the most part, but then an intense enough experience could re-trigger it. Yay! And I'm right back at square one. That should never happen. That should not happen. If you do EFT the right way the first time and you have the right support, the effects are permanent. I am not fucking kidding at all. I am not joking. They're permanent. They do not come back. Okay? I'll tell you a couple of cool stories about that. So, but first, okay, so releasing things. 2, you can release the small things. It's like what I was talking about before with road rage. Okay, that's something that you do on the fly, in the moment. Here we are. Sometimes I use it when I can't sleep, or when I can't relax and I have a tension headache, something along those lines. It works for that because it's immediate. As long as you are accurately identifying the issue, which is where your mindful linguistics and where your muscle testing comes in. Bob's your uncle, there you go, man. It's pretty cool. Okay. The third thing that you can do is reprogramming positive actions, positive habits, things along those lines. And we'll get into the specifics of how that works, but it's not like EFT is only for this one thing. Now, I'll tell you right now, if you go online and you go try to find tapping anything, you're going to have people tap for prosperity, tap for the secret, tap to manifest your destiny. Tap, yes, man, whatever. It doesn't work that way. That's getting into that whole positive thinking thing. And if you're on the Patreon, you already know about the positive thinking thing. Oh, so mad. So mad. Positive thinking is bullshit. Embrace our dark emotions and then fucking deal with them. That's what this whole thing's all about. Do not avoid them. Embrace them. Grab them by the throat. And then learn everything you can from them. That's why we go through all this shit, right? But in the end, you can also use it to improve things and improve your performance and be able to focus better and things along those lines. And it's fantastic. Right. Exactly. So, let's talk about how actually to tap. All right. Now I'm gonna release next week the article that has a physical map, but I want you guys to go along with this as we are. Now let's pretend for a minute that you are that you've already done your homework. Okay. You already know what you're going to tap on. You already know what your little problem is, okay? If you're working with somebody else, you can work on big problems, but let's just work on the little problems, okay? I don't know. Let's pretend it's road rage, okay? So what happens is you have to design your statement. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to take the negative emotion that we're focused on, and we're going to replace it with positive emotion, the most positive emotion that we can come up with, which is self-love, all right? So even though I get so frustrated that people don't follow traffic laws, and so frustration is my emotion, okay? Even though I get so frustrated, I get so angry that, what's my object? People don't follow traffic laws. I love and accept myself totally. So I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to replace it with this. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be fine that these guys are breaking traffic laws, but it does mean that I'm not going to get pissed off and upset and want to, you know, ram them with a snowplow that I'm not allowed to put on my truck. I know I asked. So we're going to rub here. There's a lymph cluster right here on your chest, okay? And you can do it either side. It doesn't matter, okay? For all of the tapping, you can do it on either side, whatever's most important. Okay? So we're going to rub here, and we're going to make our statement 3 times. Even though I get so fucking frustrated, and connect with your emotion. Connect with the feeling. Even though I get so fucking frustrated that these assholes can't follow traffic laws, I love and accept myself totally. Even though I get so frustrated, these assholes can't follow traffic laws, I love and accept myself totally. Even though I get so frustrated, these assholes can't follow traffic laws, I love and accept myself totally. We're going to focus on the negative emotion, and we're going to hit these spots exactly, okay? So right here, I did not shave my head so that I could do this for you. Total coincidence. Just saying. I just really like having a shaved head. Right, but see right here, right on the very, very top of your head, okay? So you're tapping here. Oh my God, I'm so frustrated. You're so frustrated with these assholes in traffic. Now, not in the middle. Most people want to go right here, but you're going right here, okay? So here's your eyebrow, and it's very, very inside edge, right there. So frustrated. Now here's your orbital, and you're going on just the outside of that right there, not fully on your temple, right here at the bone. So frustrated. Stupid jerks, stupid jerks. Right here, directly down from your straightforward pupil. Okay, don't do it hard because that's, you know, tender. Right here, a little divot, right there. And then, so top and bottom of the lips, right there. Now from here, we're going to go, find your clavicle, go down an inch and in an inch. And you're going to know that you got the spot because it's like, oh, yeah, so frustrated. Then right here, so take your nipple and go all the way out directly under your armpit. A lot of people skip this one. I don't, or I'll do it by proxy. Well, I'll explain proxy in just a minute. So right there, and then right down from your nipple at the front of your ribs is the other spot. Okay, another one to usually do by proxy when you're working with other people. Then you're going to hit right here, all 4 fingers, right here on the outside of your hand. Okay? Now, this is the part where we do the EMDR. Eye movement, desensitization, it's like saying and reprogramming, okay? So we're tapping right here, okay? So see the 2 metatarsals here? Right between those, right there, just about 1 knuckle back, okay? That's your gamut point, okay? And you're gonna tap that. While you're tapping that, you're gonna go, okay? So down to one side, down to the other side, all the way around in a full circle, all the way back around in a full circle. Okay, you're still tapping on the spot the whole time. For this next part, you're still tapping on the spot. You're gonna hum a song in your head. It has to be something nice and short, like, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. Then you count to 5 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you hum a song in your head. I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. Stop tapping on your gamut point. Big deep breath. This is where you call your Reiki. Okay? This is where you call your Reiki and you let that go Breathe it all the way through. Take a big deep breath. Okay? Now, I actually skipped a step. Before we even get started, and I do this when we're working with other people, not so much when I do it by myself because I know how I feel kind of thing, but you want to try to assess how intense is your emotion on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, this is a thing, I guess. I mean, I know it exists. And 10 being, and you can't talk and you're crying and the world is a, clusterfuck. And you want to try to get your feeling, you want to focus on the emotion as intensely as you can. Try to get it to like an 8 or 9 at least. And then when you're done tapping, 2 really, really big, deep cleansing all the way through breaths, and reassess. Okay? So reassess there. Can you visualize the problem that made you angry? Can you connect with it? Can you feel that anger? Can you feel that frustration? Can you feel that fear? Can you feel that level of concern to the same degree that you did before? And just putting a number on it is a good way to kind of assess it. It gives you a point of reference. That's it. And that's how long it takes. Okay? So I'm going to go over it again. You make your statement, say it 3 times. Top of the head, eyebrow, outside of the eye, under the eye. Top of the lip, chin, inch from the clavicle, under the armpit, front of the ribs, outside of the hand, gamut point, okay? Gamut point, all right? EMDR. Hum a song in your head. Count to 5 in your head. Hum a song in your head. Big deep breath. You're going to do it a couple of times. And after a while, it will become so natural that you have to think, wait, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I finished it all. And it just goes like that. It's really fucking cool. All right. So let me share a couple of really cool things that have happened with me with EFT. PTSD story, a wartime PTSD story. So I had a client who came by and was in an active flashback for several days. And their friend brought them to me, and created the safe space, walked them through the event, things like that. And the first time, there was the very distinct impression of just knowing everything about the environment, the colors that were around them, the people, what they smelled like, what they looked like, everything about it. And it was so intense and so powerful that, they were in that moment. When they hit that flashback, they were there. They were back there in that war zone. Tapped on it a couple, he could talk to begin with. So we tap on it a few times. And by about the 3rd or 4th time, they can't really remember. It's like it's behind a fog. And it doesn't even just play like a movie that they're not interested in. They just can't really remember it that much anymore because it's just not that important. It was something that happened. They learned what they needed to... What? You weren't even there. You're only 9 months old. They were... What? Well, go tell him. Puppy. Go tell him. It wasn't important anymore. They learned what they needed to from it, and that was it. That's all they needed. It was gone. And a lot of the things that happened as a result of that moment, because remember what I said is that when you have that 1/0th memory, it's super easy for other memories to get stacked right on top because the threshold has now been broken, you know? There was another time that my neighbor actually had a very, very intensely bad experience happen to him about 10, 15 years before. It might have been 20 years. And he only, the only reason I can tell this story is because he told me to tell this story. Otherwise, we don't discuss names, we don't discuss specifics or anything like that. But in this particular case, he was kidnapped by a group of women and raped. And they were planning on ending him messily, shall we say. It was extremely traumatic, and of course toxic masculinity being what, oh my God, what? Toxic masculinity being what it is. He didn't get therapy or anything like that, so he just bottled it up and carried it around for years and years and years. Because he was rescued, obviously. He wasn't murdered. Do you need to come in here? Leonidas, are you okay? What do you need, baby? Go tell him. The people had gotten arrested, the women had gotten arrested and everything like that, and my neighbor was contacted by the parole board to make a statement about the ringleader's parole hearing, and it just re-triggered everything for him. For 6 months, he was in constant crisis, living in that fight or flight moment. And are you snoring on me? Don't snore on me. Oh my God. Oh my God, you're such a puppy. Until he beat the tar out of somebody. He just snapped, and that's not a good thing. So he comes over, and we work on it. We work through it, tapping on it, and part of the reason why when you're working on the big things you need to work with a spotter and somebody who knows what the hell they're doing is because a lot of times immediately as soon as you hit one thing, especially if it's a 0th priority, all of the other 0th priority memories come up, and you have to be able to deal with them. You have to be able to cope with them, and you have to be prepared to deal with this. So we had this rape problem and kidnapping problem and fearing for your life. Well, come on, you weirdo. Fearing for his life, come on. But, come on. He's only 9 months old. My couch isn't good enough for you? Fine. Jerk. No. So we dealt with all that, but almost immediately behind that, he was dealing with feelings of guilt and shame for having left home when he was like 14, 15 years old. Not because he wanted to, he was actually thrown out by his father, but because that meant that his mother and little brother were left there to be abused even further. And, shame that he didn't fight harder to protect them, or that he didn't, what's a 14-year-old kid going to do, really? But that doesn't make logical sense to an emotion. You can't logic out emotions all the time. We try to. We can, but when something is so intense, you can't do that. You have to have some other means of release. And then, the abuses that he suffered at the hands of his father. And it just, until finally things just stopped coming up. Things just stopped moving forward. It took a couple of hours, easily. And at the end of it, he's sitting there and he's like, I'm I think I'm having a heart attack. And I'm like, I check his pulse, and it's like, no, I think you're okay. Do you describe your symptoms? He's like, my chest is just really warm. And I said, honey, you're happy. You don't have all that stuff hanging around with you anymore. You're just happy. He went home. His wife was thrilled. He was back involved in the family again. It was utterly fantastic. It was beautiful. So third story. And this last one I'm going to tell, and then we're going to get to the Castaneda maneuver and everything like that. You all know, or most of you should know by now, that my son died over 13 years ago. About 13 and a half years ago. I was about 30 months pregnant. 30 weeks pregnant. Oh, well, yeah, there you go. No, I was 30 weeks pregnant. So enormous. I was huge. And that was baby number 5. Things did not go well. And he died of a cord accident, which was really bad, because he was perfectly healthy up until the time he was dead. And I knew that there was something wrong. And the doctor didn't listen to me. And didn't listen to me when I told him he wasn't moving anymore. And so I had to carry him around for an extra week. Thanks. You know who you are, you fucker. Karma's a bitch. And nobody should ever have to go through that. It sucks. Do not recommend. Just saying. Well, unsurprisingly, kind of lost my shit for a while. And then sort of got it back together and started writing again and doing stuff. And I was working with a lady, and we're doing a teleseminar about life after death. And I was going to give this whole big thing about how life after death is kind of a weird question to even ask, because why do we want to know the answer? You always have to ask that first. Why do we want to know the answer? We have ghost stories and we have faith. The only reason you should be obsessed with life after death is if your moral decisions are based on that, in which case maybe you're not that great of a person and we need to reassess your attitude, kind of thing. So I was going to talk about, ghosts and the ghost hunting that I'd done and things like that, and how, we'd gotten stories resolved and relieved some hauntings and replaced batteries and thermostats was actually a lot of it. But also telling people stories, and that was really cool too. But instead, Toby came out. Toby was my son. And I couldn't breathe all of a sudden. And I had a 50-pound weight on my chest, and then it was a 100-pound weight, and it was a 200-pound weight. And my friend, who at the time was in South Africa, and I was in Wyoming, says, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Can I tap on that for you? And she knew the story. I mean, she knew what had happened. And I said, yes, please, that would be great. 20 seconds. Okay, so she's got Reiki. She's got EFT. We know what the hell we're doing. And I think I took the first breath that I had taken since I got pregnant with Toby. Maybe the first breath I'd ever taken ever, because it was so enormous. And all the grief and all the sorrow and all the pain and all the anger and everything that I had not been able to release just went away. And it was replaced with this warm, beautiful love and this gratitude that this little soul, huge soul, enormous soul, had chosen me for this very critical part of his journey, to have just one lifetime. That's all I needed was just one lifetime that was held in perfectly in love and peace. He never knew anger. He never knew fear. He never knew hunger or anything like that. He had an absolutely perfect lifetime. Who gets that? Nobody gets that. It's kind of cool, you know? So, I mean, I'd already seen EFT do some pretty fucking amazing things, but that was my very favorite personal experience. And I've gotten over some pretty intense things from it as well. But that was a really, really, that's the big one. Yeah. Okay. So, using a spotter, have to use a spotter if you're going to work on big stuff. Who are the spotters? Well, Sarah is a spotter. She took my first Reiki and EFT course, and she and I have worked together for many years now, and I trust her completely. In fact, she's going to be my spotter. That tells you something about her skill level. I, of course, can be a spotter, and as I just demonstrated with the story of what happened to me personally, we don't even have to be in the same town. We don't have to be on the same continent. I've done this work with people that I had never and have never met in person. Jack. And I might cry, just so you know. So my friend Jack, he passed away a couple of years ago, which is why I might cry. But before that, he got, for some reason, he got super, super freaked out by Slender Man and spiders in general, but Slender Man in particular. And he was just like having a full tilt anxiety attack. And of course, this is all mumbo jumbo bullshit. He didn't believe in any of it. I'm like, well, just try it anyway, And, just do I have your permission? Okay, cool, no problem. Good boy. And, yeah, he wasn't afraid of spiders anymore. He wasn't afraid of Slender Man either. Which was really cool. It opened up some options for him and allowed him to go to a few more Halloween parties that year, which was kind of important. But he passed on a couple of years ago from kidney failure. He had had 2 transplants, and I think he was like 25, 27. He was not very old. And he and I never met in person. But he was one of my dearest, closest friends, and I still miss him very much. That's a really good point. Let's talk about what is appropriate to tap on. Okay? So PTSD, obviously. PTSD is a great example of being neurologically stuck in one place. But sometimes we can't always identify an event or a moment where we are trapped. But we can experience being stuck in an emotion or a thought or an idea. A really great example of this is someone who, and this is really good for Audis as well, by the way, Audis and Aspies, because we hyper-focus and we fixate on an idea or on a thought. And I'm going to warn you guys right now, we might not go the full 2 hours because I'm really hungry. But we'll see. We'll get as far as we can. We fixate on thoughts, and it doesn't matter that they don't make sense or that they are defied by all evidence. We fixate on them, and we can't let them go. This is great for that. Being stuck in a moment, being stuck in a thought, that's where we want to use EFT as a release. Okay? When we want to use EFT to reprogram to help us get, to improve our performance in whatever capacity there is, we want to make sure that we've done all of the heavy emotional work first, because what can sometimes happen, and what I've seen happen in the past, is you try to work on a performance thing and it is completely undermined because right in the middle of visualizing and projecting out, this is what I want to accomplish, all the negative things that are keeping you from doing that in the first place like to come up and just chomp you right on the balls. It sucks. A lot. You guys know. No ball chomping. Deal with your shit first. It makes sense, right? Okay. Does anybody have any questions at this point? And yes, I'm gonna release the diagram of where to tap and when and how. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? All right, fantastic. Right. Okay. So, here is the castaneda effect. Now, I use this particularly for when we have momentary anxiety or worry. Carlos Castaneda, you guys may have heard of him if you've done any sort of work or research. Oh, excuse me, goodness gracious. Into any type of alternative healing or energy healing work. His name comes up. It's hit or miss for me as far as, efficacy is concerned, but this one I really, really like, okay? So, now, I have tattoos, so I know which way is which, but here's how it's gonna work. So you have this anxious thought, okay? I use it a lot when my brain won't shut up when I wanna go to sleep, before I go to the full-on tapping, because it's faster. We like that. So you turn your head all the way to the left, as far as it'll go, okay? And you have your anxious thought. It's in your head. It's right there. You take a big deep breath. Hey! Back your puppy butt up. Don't knock my shit over. You said the word anxious. You must need to pet me. Maybe. Oh my gosh. Okay. So. No. Out. Go on. So. You turn your head all the way to the left. And you think of your anxious thought. Big deep breath. And you're going to blow out as you turn your head all the way to the right. Okay, so, anxious thought. And yes, you have to make the lip face. And you're just releasing it. Yes, just like the 478 thing. It's an oxygen in your brain thing, and it fucking works. Don't ask me why. I love it. Castaneda maneuver is not as permanent as EFT, but it is really, really good if you are in a moment of crisis. It's really, really good if you are, if you're not in a position where you can stop and really address an issue on a deep level. Or if you want to find out if the anxiety that you're feeling is a legitimate threat, or if it's a sort of a neurological twitch. For people who have anxiety disorders, this is a serious question that we have to ask. Am I really, is this really something that I need to be worried about? Is this something that I really need to be concerned about? I lived with basically overwhelming anxiety every day for years, and I thought there was something seriously the fuck wrong with me, because the world could not possibly be surrounded with this many goddamn threats. So I just brute forced my way through everything and sucked it up and just did things even though I was afraid, and that was a terrible idea. It's an awful, awful way to be, because then you can't actually tell what your real threats are. And you end up fucking yourself up really, really bad. Don't do that. So when there's a question, you're not sure if there's something to be concerned about, you're not sure if there's a threat. Castaneda maneuver, and I don't know what it's actually called or what they called it or anything like that. That's just what I remember it from. So if you try to Google it, we'll come up with something else. I'll find the right word for it. That's an easy way to cut to the chase and to nip it in the bud and see if there's anything legitimately concerned. The other thing is when you have a hard time controlling your anxiety, go ahead and do that so that you can get it out of the way in order to address whatever the real threat is. Okay? Okay. So here's the final part. Yeah. You know, because we start with the 5 principles, then we've got our Reiki, then we've got our words, then we've got our muscle testing, so we know where we want to go, how to get there. All right, we get down to the tapping, we get down to the releasing, we are consciously working on things, and I recommend when you have a laundry list of things that you want to work on, plan it about once a week, give or take, okay? Don't let it sit too long, but don't be overly aggressive about addressing it just because. You want to give yourself time to sort of calm down and relax and reassess, because what happens when you pull that pin, and this is the super important part, when you pull that pin and you're no longer tied to this moment of trauma, you're no longer tied to this moment of anxiety, you're no longer tied to this bad habit or to this horrible event or whatever. All of the emotions that got bunged up and tangled up because they're stuck here, they have to relax and unravel. And so definitely when you have a heavy session, give yourself time. Give yourself really, a lot of excellent self-care. Remember, it's not self-indulgence. Don't go making stupid fucking decisions and use, oh, I did EFT as an excuse. I will dick punch you. Self-care. Take a hot bath. Don't engage in anything super strenuous or intense. Drink lots of water. Make sure you eat something. Little shit like that. Okay? And then you have to constantly reassess and say, where do I need to relearn positive traits to replace whatever this coping mechanism was serving for me? So like our veteran, okay? He can't remember that anymore. It's not a big deal anymore. But now what? I mean, when you have an event that was so intense that for years, it literally dictated every single decision that you made, either through drugs and alcohol, by trying to self-medicate, because that's where addiction comes from, sunshine. It has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. It has to do with us trying to salve a wound and a pain that is so deep, that is bleeding out so much, we don't know how to fucking deal with it. We don't have the skills, we don't have, how do you do that? Drink it away, smoke it away, shoot it away. Sneeze it away. Excuse me. Rock on. Right? You have to replace it, Going back to the story of Noah, okay? 40 days, 40 nights. He's not drinking. He's detoxed. He physiologically is not craving it anymore, psychologically maybe. And what he replaces that desire to drink with, what he replaces the pain with, the things that are important to him and the things that are important to God. Replace it with his family, replace it with animals, replace it with fishing. Shit, man, I don't know. But more than that, learning how to trust the emotional process. And that's a big part of what the raven and the eventually the dove are all about. Is here is this enormous emotional sea, this pain. I'm going to trust the process of seeking peace, our 5 principles, to replace whatever this damage was in the first place. Pretty cool. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So we release and we reprogram. Most of the time, for every 3 or 4 sessions, you're only going to tap once, or going to tap during one session, I should say. And then work on building those skills. Work on building the anger knot, worry knot, gratitude, doing your work honestly, compassion, respect. And now that you don't have something holding you in a moment of panic and fear and terror, and anger and vitriol and hatred, you can do that. Sometimes it requires tapping consciously on the positive side, and that's where like the whole performance thing comes in. We can use that when it's hard to grasp one of the positive lessons. No, you don't go that way. Pooping and woofing. Did you woof? Don't talk to me. Yeah, he's only 9 months old and he's about 75 pounds now. Did you have foods? Are you hungry? Well, go tell Joseph. Go tell Dad. Go tell Daddy. Go tell Daddy you're hungry.
Leonidas?
That is Leonidas.
I just fed him.
Oh, does he need to go outside? Since he just ate? He doesn't talk really well yet, so we gotta, see. Play 20 questions. Do you guess what he needs? But you have to be prepared to do the after work, or there's no point in it. I mean, really. If you're not going to work to be a better human being, what the fuck are you doing here, man? You have to know that the journey to healing is not straightforward. It's really fucking messy. Hurts like a son of a bitch. But luckily, because we have EFT, it only hurts for a minute. And then after that, it doesn't hurt anymore. Here is probably my favorite part about the healing process. And I wish I'd thought about this ahead of time and I would have been better prepared. Khalil Gibran in The Prophet wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here because it's been at least a couple of minutes since I read it, that joy and sorrow, man is only capable of joy to the same depth that he is capable of sorrow, for the issue forth from the same well. And my experience has said that that is absolutely fucking true. People who are sheltered, people who don't really get to experience intense life, and I mean falling down and breaking legs and getting into fist fights and having their hearts stomped on and being truly, truly hurt down to their soul, never really seem able or capable of getting to the really, really high levels of joy. And they can't understand why poets can write what they write, and we can have these amazing love stories and these amazing epic tales. They can't relate to it because they can't imagine anything being that intense. And yet those things exist. somebody wasn't making it up going, man, I sure wish I could feel that intense. That sure would be awesome. No, they felt that and had to express it. What on earth are you about? That doesn't mean you have to stay in the sorrow and pain for a longer period of time so you can get to higher places. It's a purely degrees, not length of time. You get down this low, you can get up this high. It's okay. You don't have to stay there. You also don't have to feel bad if you recover before other people do. You don't have to feel bad, and you are not allowed to feel guilty if you start healing and other people haven't caught up with you yet. Joseph, move him back, please. He is a little bit too close to that monitor. Thank you very much. Hi. Can he reach the monitors? Hi, gorgeous. Anyway, I'm addressing this only in brief because it is extremely common when you have had a very bad wound, especially a wound that has hurt other people. Because remember, hurt people, okay? It's sometimes really hard to not feel guilty for feeling better. It's also really hard to not judge other people for not healing as fast as you do. Don't do that. Don't fall for that. It's bullshit. You can be mad when somebody hurts you. Abso-fucking-lutely. But don't live in it. Anger is a signpost. It points to the problem, because just for today, I will anger not. Just for today, I will worry not. Just for today, I will be grateful. Just for today, I will do my work honestly. Just for today, I will treat myself, all living things, with compassion and respect. You are here to heal almost everybody who's watching this. You're here to heal because you want to bring that to other people. But if you are a walking cat shit sandwich, or you are bleeding out everywhere, you ain't doing anybody a whole lot of fucking good. Take care of yourself first and know that that's just you putting the oxygen mask on yourself so that you can help the other person who can't do it yet, who can't reach it yet. Okay? I think that's mostly it. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Does anybody need to see the tapping again, or do you just want to wait for the handout? Hey, Joseph. There is a little hand brush over on the, I'm sorry, if somebody said something, I didn't see it. There's a hand brush over there on the little table. Can you bring that to me? Okay. Yeah, it's a little oval brush. Which technique is effective when one is picking up on the anxieties from happening outside? Okay, that is a great question. Fantastic question. So, anxieties, you are not going to develop anxieties and you are not going to feel anxieties within yourself or from the outside unless you already have something that resonates within yourself, okay? It's why people that you have nothing in common with, you're not going to be attracted to. You know, if you're attracted to somebody, you guys have something in common, that kind of thing. And that's friends, lovers, whatever. Okay. So when you recognize consciously that there is an anxiety outside of you, our political climate, for instance, right? Use the Castaneda maneuver, okay? Focus on Trump's an asshole, or I'm terrified of global warming, or things like that. And the reason that we want to address it like that in the quick version is because once that's out of the way, or if we try to release it and it doesn't go, it is pointing to a bigger issue, an internal issue that we do need to tap on. Why are we going to tap on something that's that much larger than ourselves? I mean, we can't tap on global warming. We can't, on global climate destabilization. The VHS video that I saw in 1987 called it fucking global warming, okay? Or was it 85? I think it was 85, actually. 84, 85, somewhere in there. It was a long fucking time ago. It's our fear. And if we are controlled by our fear, we can't do anything to fix it. We can't do anything to prepare for it. We can't do anything to overcome it. Okay? We can't overcome global climate destabilization. It's happening. It's happened. We're done. As far as that's concerned, we can, however, prepare ourselves for an alternate mode of existence, changing our lifestyles in a radical way, being prepared for like massive freaking disaster. And shit's gonna come down, and it's gonna suck, and it's not gonna be cool, and there's really no easy way out of this. But that doesn't mean that we have to live in fear of it. Okay? It doesn't mean that we have to be angry all the time. We're not supposed to be angry all the time. I'm angry about this. What can I do about it? Well, if you can't solve the problem, you find a way around it. Which is, of course, what we've been talking about a lot in other capacities. Okay? So, when you're dealing with something, especially in the moment, use the Castaneda maneuver first. And then if you still have persistence, if you feel like it's bigger than a moment, it's definitely time for tapping, but obviously call me, message me, something like that. I've done sessions with people I've never even spoken to over voice. I've done sessions with people exclusively over chat. I did one session via text message on 2 people. That was an exciting night. Mostly that I did it. And they're like, what the shit's going on? I'm like, I know, it's weird. Have fun. But, does that answer your question? Is more to the, what I need to know. And are there any other questions? Hi, Meow. You want some? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I am going to do, yes, there's going to be, I am going to do a shorter video. I did one a little bit ago, but I am planning on uploading a video. It's probably going to be on the Patreon, because I like food. Just saying. That's going to be just just that part and walking through the step-by-step, you know, here's how to, you know, assess it. Here's how to design your questions. Here's how to do your muscle testing. Here's how to set up your tapping. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. So that'll be a separate one a little bit later. Okay. I mean, I love y'all and everything, but I'm really hungry. So if you guys don't need anything else immediately, obviously spread the word, get subscriptions out there, or get people to subscribe and sign up, and yeah, things like that. And we'll see you guys next week when we're going to talk about forgiveness. That's a really, really big, big class. And we're going to use EFT for it too. Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget to like the video, and